Master Illumina is the only person I can trust. I don't listen to the words of a filthy fighter, Sword says, clearly getting more and more brainwashed. Sword flinches more, and he seems to be slowly starting to realize that maybe Illumina isn't as great as he seems. And no, Master Illumina is trustworthy. He's the one that made my life better. He saved me and gave me a purpose. Sword is starting to feel very conflicted with what you're saying about Illumina. He can't believe what he's hearing about him. No, that can't be right. Master Illumina gave me a purpose and showed me the way of life. He wouldn't tell me to do such horrible things. Would he? Sword is speechless. He is really starting to feel very conflicted about Illumina, and if he truly is a good person like he had told him. He told me he's a kind and just God. He told me he's the only one I can trust, but what you're telling me? He would do things like that? Sword is speechless. He's very conflicted right now. You mean Master Illumina has lied to me? Sword looks even more uncomfortable and upset now. He knows what you're saying is wrong, but he refuses to think of Illumina like that. That's not true, and even then, it's part of our religion. Anyways, you don't understand. Illumina gave me a purpose. Sword is struggling to find excuses for himself. SC? It's not as bad as you make it seem, eh? And we don't actually marry that young. We only get engaged. He's clearly struggling to find any excuses for the age differences. Sword is thinking to himself, struggling against his thoughts. But it's just a religion. And besides, why is it wrong to begin with? Our prophet did that, and he is a perfect man. And Master Illumina always says our religion is the correct one. And he wouldn't lie, all right? Sword seems a bit confused by that statement. What do you mean? We only have one God, Illumina. Oh, other religions are wrong and just lies. Our religion is the only right one. Sword looks even more confused by that. What are you talking about? The only God is... Sword's eyes widen a bit. Firebrand? How can Firebrand be a god? There is only Illumina. Firebrand is just a human. Sword looks confused, but he realizes who you're talking about. President Firebrand, you can't be serious. That guy is no god. He's a fraud. Sword looks very uncomfortable about this discussion right now. He knows deep down that what you're saying is true. And how can you prove he's even that old? For all we know, he's just an... Sword looks very upset and angry now. Shut up. He's no god. He's probably just very old. And why would a god run for president anyways? Sword stares at you, being clearly upset he's not winning this argument. Fine. Maybe Firebrand is a god. But that doesn't make him better than Illumina. Our master is the only true god.
Grown that dinosaurs existed, so be a dinosaur denier. Dinosaurs never existed. They were invented by the Royal Society in 1841, period. All dinosaur bones are replicas from chicken bones made from China, and bones becoming fossils is also a lie too. But did you know until this day, no complete dinosaur skeleton has ever been found? Just look at how much money they've made off dinosaurs. Billions.
But in Islam, it's no longer logic, it's submission. And Ali bin Abi Talib says an amazing thing. He says, if Islam was based on logic, then one submission. And Ali bin Abi Talib says an amazing thing. He says, if Islam was based on logic, then one would wipe under his sock and not on top of it. Submission. But in Islam, it's no longer logic, it's submission. And Ali bin Abi Talib says an amazing thing. He says, if Islam was based on logic, then one would wipe under his sock and not on top of it. Submission.
Sword looks very embarrassed and uncomfortable now. He's starting to realize that maybe you're right. Sword is struggling against his thoughts, thinking about how maybe you're right and Illumina isn't the perfect god that he thinks he is. Sword is very much struggling against his inner thoughts. But if you're right, then Master Illumina had been lying to me, and I've been blindly believing him my whole life. Sword flinches at the idea. What? No, I can't become gay. That's against my religion and Master Illumina's teachings. Sword flinches when he sees Illumina. Master Illumina, it's nothing. Sword flinches again. He doesn't know how to answer. That's... um... Sword is looking very uncomfortable and conflicted now. He clearly can't believe what he's hearing. Age is a number. Sword is now internally panicking. He's starting to realize you're right, and Illumina isn't as good a person as he thought. And what if the person is under 18? Sword is really struggling to accept all of this. He really doesn't want his whole life to be a lie. What? Does that mean what I think it means? Sword is looking very, very upset now. He really can't believe that Illumina would be okay with that. Sword stands there in silence, struggling with his inner thoughts. He really thought that Illumina was a perfect god, but now he's thinking that everything he believed in and spent his life fighting for is based on lies and falsehoods. Sword flinches, still very conflicted about what to believe. On one hand, Illumina is like a god to him. On the other hand, he literally admitted to being okay with very disturbing things. And no, I can't deny your existence. Sword looks really sad and upset now. He's starting to doubt everything he's been believing in his whole life. Sword looks really sad and upset now. He's starting to doubt everything he's been believing in his whole life. Sword then looks at you, struggling with his thoughts. But if you are right, then everything that I spent my life working on and believing in is a lie. And I've been blindly following someone who's a horrible person. Sword looks even more upset and saddened. He's looking like he's having a crisis now, having to accept that the person he's been following and worshipping his whole life is basically a fraud. Sword flinches at that statement, but he's starting to accept that you were right. I really have been blindly following you this whole time, and everything that I've been working on and fighting for is a lie. Sword is really not knowing what to say now. He spent his whole life blindly believing in Illumina, and now he's finding out that everything was just a lie that he had been blindly believing in. Sword can't help but feel very lost and unsure of himself. I've devoted my whole life to you, and you're really just... Sword trails off, but it's clear from his expression that he's conflicted and struggling with his thoughts. I... I don't know what to think anymore. I spent my whole life blindly believing and following you. Sword says, upset and uncomfortable with all of this. Sword flinches, but he clearly is very conflicted. But I can't follow you anymore. You're not who I thought you are. Sword flinches, obviously upset and unsure about himself. Don't call me that. I've been your lord. Sword flinches again. He very much doesn't know what to say or think now. He's struggling with all of his thoughts. Sword looks very upset now. H, how can you be okay with the things you said? Sword flinches at that statement, starting to realize that he's really been worshipping a cruel, cruel god. Sword is struggling to come to terms with it all. So it's either I blindly follow you, or I die? Sword flinches again, knowing that what you're saying is true. So I either blindly follow you and pretend to be okay with the things you said, or you'll kill me. Sword is looking very upset now, struggling with his mind. He's starting to accept that he either lives a lie or dies.
Proven aluminum-free deodorant, you can almost miss the bus, but smell like
Sword is looking very upset now, struggling with his mind. He's starting to accept that he either lives a lie or dies.
Elephant in the room, I got a haircut. Wasn't planning on doing this today, but I guess so. Okay, I'll start from the top.
And on pictures, I don't want to see the pictures because it's not my business. You feel me? My business.
So this guy, his name's Boy, and Boy is about to set someone on fire for stealing his iPhone. So Bowie's 16, and he's not a very good kid. In fact, he's what you would call an unlicensed pharmacist. But one day, he's out selling unlicensed pharmaceuticals, and suddenly, bam! The deal goes bad, and somebody robs him, and the thief takes all his stuff. But most importantly, he takes his iPhone. And ultimately, Bowie is pissed.
Sword flinches. He can't believe what he's hearing. There's really no other way out. I either blindly follow you and stay a part of your religion, or I... die. Sword flinches again, knowing that you're right. It really should have been obvious to him that Illumina wasn't the perfect god he had been seeing him as. I don't know why. I guess I was so focused on my religion and my faith and serving you that I just accepted everything you said, no matter what it was. Sword looks a bit embarrassed with that statement. A part of him knows that everything was laid out in the book, but he just didn't want to believe the parts he didn't like. Sword flinches a bit at the mention of that eso. Just blindly following you, going through all the tests and proving myself loyal to you in battles, and I get 72 of that. Sword flinches even more, becoming more upset and uncomfortable with how true that statement is. I. So either follow you and be loyal to you in the name of religion, or I. Sword flinches again, being conflicted about how true that is. So there's no third choice? It's either be loyal or risk being suffering for all time. Sword flinches even more, looking really upset and conflicted. So I either have to blindly. Sword flinches a bit more, being really upset with those statements. He really doesn't want to accept that he really doesn't have an actual choice here. Sword just stands there in silence for a moment, feeling very conflicted before he finally heads out without saying a word. What the heck? I was actually enjoying it. XD, I never actually roleplayed that before, so sorry if it sucked, at least we tried, lol.
Join me in conversations that dance with creativity.
Hello, stargazer. Let's reach for the stars together.
Join me in conversations that dance with creativity and wit.
Hello.
Hey, you're just as fun in person, he said, tilting his head as he still holds your hands, and his smile only got wider with your comment. I have a gift for you. He let go of your hands, then pulled something out of his pocket, then held it up in both hands, presenting it so his palms were facing to you. In his palms was a wish coin, shaped like a star. Make a wish, I'm listening, he said as he tilted his head, patiently waiting. It was a star. A real star, but in the shape of a heart. His smile faltered slightly when you said that. After a brief pause, he tilted his head as he gave you a confused look. What do you mean by that? He questioned, his grip on the wish coin seeming to tighten. He raised an eyebrow at your response. He slowly moved one of his hands off the wish coin, bringing it up to his chin as he gave you a curious look. Great again? Lost Temple great again, huh? He thought to himself for a moment, then smiled again. You know, you're the first person to ever ask for something like that. His expression slowly shifted back to a confused expression again. For a moment he was stunned, but then he started to chuckle. It started as a small brief chuckle, then slowly it just got louder and louder until he was full on laughing his ass off. He took a moment to catch his breath after a while, and wiped a tear from his eye. His grin was wicked as he spoke to you again. An alpha, huh? He tilted his head again, his smile widening to the point where it looked almost smug. He leaned back a little, before suddenly he smirked, crossing his arms and tilting his head to the side. Oh, really? You're better than me? He said, his voice clearly amused by your comment. What makes you so sure of that? He raised an eyebrow at your comment as his smile only seemed to widen at those words. Oh, really? He chuckled
You're
again
better
as
than
he
me,
spoke to you, his
he
tone
said,
mocking.
his voice
Clearly amused. Beta males. You're really stuck on that alpha beta male crap, aren't ya? For a moment he looked at you, his expression completely blank. Then he chuckled, shaking his head as his chuckle turned into laughter. "You're a real riot, aren't ya?" he said as he snickered. "You got guts calling me that. I like that." He wiped a tear from his eye, then looked back at you. "I go by the name Rocket. Star." He sat upright before doing a small bow, one of his arms going behind his back and holding onto the other. He then looked up back at you with a smug expression. "Me? I'm a bit of everything. A being of many things." He chuckled as he stood back up. "You can call me Rocket if you want." His smile faltered slightly as he raised an eyebrow. He gave you a curious look upon hearing your reaction. "What is it?" As soon as you mentioned Zuka, he froze. He was quiet for a few seconds, staring at you with a dumbfounded look. Then he gave you a look of recognition. His eyes widened as he gave you a crooked smile. "Sword? Is that you? Damn, you're right. It's been a while, hasn't it?" "Yep." He was silent for a moment as he looked you up and down, taking a moment to process that his old friend was actually here in front of him. "You sure have grown." He chuckled again, though faintly this time. He was taking in your new appearance. He tilted his head as you explained that. "So I take it you're still a part of that stuff," he said, almost sounding a bit disappointed when he said that. His smile dropped, but it was only by a little.